Hello and welcome to episode 3 of season 3 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast. I'm Greg Ralph, Film Watcher.
And I'm filmmaker Richard Di Gregorio.
Now, if you're a regular listener, you might have just worked out that we normally do that the other way around, but this episode is our Surreally Strange Day episode, isn't it, Ricardo?
It just feels really weird.
I'm just pleased I get to go first for once. Anyway, what we're doing today is looking at 3 films which have some kind of surreal element, or in some cases, many surreal elements to them, to tell a story. So we're going to start with the 2014 recent film called The One I Love.
Yeah. Then we're going to look at 1994's film Natural Born Killers.
And then finally look at 2004's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Okay, just to get us going now, Greg, tell us about The One I Love.
I've been nagging Ricardo to watch this 2014 film pretty much since it came out. It will also be one of the hardest films we've had to discuss because we really shouldn't say what happens in it. One of the joys is slowly working that out for yourself. So, at a high level, Sophie and Ethan's marriage is at a crisis point after he's had an affair. They go to see a therapist, played by Ted Danson, who suggests that they have a weekend away together, at a place where he's sent lots of couples who all come back renewed. On their first night there, they start to discover that this property has a unique property of itself in both senses of that word. Now, we can't say exactly what that is, but as Ethan says when they first work it out, think the Twilight Zone. Or if you really want to know before you see the film, have a careful look at their pool reflections in the film's poster. What follows is a tight but fascinating examination of marriage and what different people want out of it. Trust and fidelity are important dimensions here. This low-budget film, made only for $100,000, is a family affair. It was filmed at the beautiful Californian home of actors Ted Danson and Mary Steenburgen, not surprisingly, given that the director, Charlie McDowell, is Steenburgen's son. The costume designer was actor Rooney Mara, McDowell's girlfriend, under a pseudonym. From an acting perspective, it's very much a two-hander. Beyond the therapist character, there's really only the married couple. Sophie is played by Elizabeth Moss. She's usually best known for high-end TV programs, such as The Handmaid's Tale, Top of the Lake, Mad Men and The West Wing. Ethan is played by Mark Duplass. Duplass is an actor, writer, producer, director with a particular interest in examining the modern middle-class male and his various relationships. I was led to this film after enjoying some of his other work such as Hump Day and The Dodeca Pentathlon. Yes, that is the name of the film. And this particular film has become a favourite. In my view, this is one of the best recent films that you've never heard of. But Ricardo, no pressure. Now that you've finally seen this film, what did you think?
I know you've been wanting me to watch this for a long time. And I've seen the cover, the DVD cover. It sits in my shelf and I think, I've got to watch that. I've got to watch that. I've got to watch that. So I really like this film, okay, because out of all 3 surreal films discussed on this episode, it's the simplest in its execution. It's quite simply made, and it is. It's shot on $100,000. It doesn't look like that. It looks like it's shot for a lot more. They've obviously spent a lot on the grade.
No great location costs for this, because it's basically
exactly
their
right,
house.
Exactly right. And so, look, it looks great, and the performances are fantastic. But the premise itself, the couple's chemistry is great. Okay, how can I put this without giving anything away?
It's really hard.
It's really difficult. But look, their performances are great in a lot of ways, and there's subtle differences in the way they portray that.
It's really hard.
Difficult.
Look, we can stop now. Just go and watch it.
Just watch it. It's very good. I love the way they actually made the film. From a filmmaker's perspective, they shot it differently between sort of the main house and the guest house.
Yep.
Okay, the main house was very handheld, and the guest house was sort of more on tripods and dollies. Okay, so it was actually structurally, different. When you watch it again, you'll see that it's shot differently, and the colours are different too. The guest house is a lot more saturated in colour. Mm-hmm. The production design's a bit more brighter. There's a bit more light in there.
Even though at times they shut out the outside world and its light
exactly
through
right.
blinds and so
that's
on.
in the production
as part
design.
of the story.
Yeah, it is in the production design. And then in the main house, you get that bit of darkness. It's a bit more indie, sort of a handheld and a bit grungier looking.
Yeah, okay.
So I love the way they were able to sort of make differences there, and that's due to the story.
I think we can say because the two there are two buildings on the property. There's the main house, the guest house, and there's a little outhouse kind of building as well, a little shack. Right. But those two main buildings are, in a sense, their own worlds, thematically in terms of the story. And what I hadn't picked up on, but what you're now saying, is technically how they made them seem a bit different as well.
That's right.
Got it.
Yeah. So I really like that.
And I think we can say that they're very clever in the way they show the different actors in those two different worlds. So very subtle aspects of costume and hair.
And yes,
this is so hard.
I agree.
We take spoilers very seriously here.
It's interesting. We do. I think Ted Danson in the role of the therapist.
Yeah, who's unnamed.
I was thinking, what's he doing in such a minor role? Which obviously makes sense now because it was his house. But, you know, and he lent it to them, obviously.
And, you know, Mary Steenburgen was in the film too?
No.
She was the voice of the mother on the voicemail message.
Really?
Of the character.
Wow. Okay, I had no
idea. So they're all involved
connected.
around the scenes.
Yeah.
But, you know, Ted Danson's part is crucial to the setup of the story. And, you know, even that, he gives them that odd exercise to do with the piano. So he's a marriage therapist,
right, yeah.
and he sits them down in front of a piano and says, now, just at random, I want you both to just press a key. And then the keys are in, you know, discord.
Completely out of sync.
And, you know, if you sat two people down and they hit two keys at random, there's a very strong chance they'll be, you know, in discord. And yet he says, this obviously shows how you're not, you know, attuned or whatever. Yeah. And so it's like, what therapist would do that? But it makes more sense as you go along. But I'm a great fan of a show that's been running on Netflix called The Good Place. And he actually plays quite a similar character. It's a main character, you know, all the way through, but a very similar character where he's the Archangel Michael, who starts out, you know, looking like someone who's there to help people, and there's actually more to his story. So I wouldn't be surprised if you got that part on the back of this part, because there is something quite similar between the two characters.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We've chosen these surreal sort of films here. Now, barring the second one...
And a film that we can't actually tell you what's surreal about it.
Well, that's right. But taking the second one away, you know, the difference in the two movies between sort of the one I love and our third film, which we'll discuss, is...
Which is Eternal Sunshine, yeah.
Yeah, is that this one, they're trying to make it work, okay? They're trying to make their relationship work, whereas the other, it's over and they're trying to erase the relationship altogether. So there's two differences there, which is all about... sort of trying to better themselves and their relationship in sort of the same way, but
well, in fact,
it's
interesting you say that, because what struck me is that all three of these films, although we chose them as having these surreal elements, all three of these films are actually about love. A couple at different stages of love. So Natural Born Killers, you know, they've just sort of bonded and they're, you know, very, very intensely together.
Yes.
Then you've got, in this story, the ones who've been married for a period of time and things are on the rocks and they're trying to get back on track. And in the third one, you've got a couple who've ended things.
Yes.
But we'll come to that.
We'll come to that then. But, you know, so I find that quite interesting. But they do this really well. I really like the way they put this together. The screenplay is very good, and apparently the actors did a bit of improvisation.
A lot of improvisation.
Yeah.
So what they started out with was a 50-page document that was the entire movie. You had, you know, the scene beats, the locations, everything they needed to know to perform the story. But the actual dialogue was improvised all the way through.
Yeah, wow.
Now, I'm usually not at all a fan of improvised films because I find them a bit messy or chaotic.
Well, they are.
And or sometimes really crude. You know, comedies like The 40-Year-Old Virgin and films like that, where they improvise around being crass, and I get over that.
Well, they're scripted, but what happens is with those ones there, they allow the actors to do some improvisation on certain lines and just give a lot in a shot, and then they'll choose the best gags, you know. So you got to give comedians that freedom.
I typically find that tedious, I have to say, as a viewer, not as a performer.
Yeah.
But in this, you know, if the whole dialogue is improvised, if I hadn't read that online, I would never ever know that. It works. There's a few things in the story at the end I still felt like I wanted explained.
Well,
what was the purpose of that shack?
Getting to my next point, I felt like the end just let me down a little bit. I just thought, could we get more explanation here? Or when you see it, you'll understand. But I was just a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, there's some ultimate objective behind the whole scenario. You never find out what that is. I don't mind not finding out about some of the personas in the story.
Yeah.
You know, I would have liked to have known, but I respect the fact that we didn't find out about their origin.
Well, we see couples at the beginning, like on the iPad and everything like that, going, you know, had an amazing time, had blah blah blah. So it's obviously working for couples. This treatment.
Yes.
but not here, and so it's quite interesting. I don't know, you just got to watch it.
That's interesting. You just made me realise that, in fact, all three films, the couples are all going through some form of treatment.
Yeah.
Might come back to that as well. All these sub-themes, these films talking to each other that we haven't planned for. But there's that little shack where there's a computer with all these files on it, and that becomes very important in the story. But I sit there thinking, but why is it there? And why does one character get to see that stuff? That part of the story didn't quite hang together. I think you're right. But look, that's a quibble for me.
Yeah.
I have to say, the other thing, I'd seen this before. I could not remember how it. I remember how it ended, but not how it got there.
Yeah.
And so I had the joy of trying to put that together in my mind again and thinking about certain characters. So, what do they want? What are they really trying to achieve here? I never understood that. I'm comfortable not understanding. I kind of wanted to know, but it was okay.
I'm not going to say too much more because I feel like I'm going to give something away. And this is one you really want to just watch it and then you'll hear the podcast and go, oh, no, I know what they meant.
If you read anything about this film online, any kind of review, or if you watch the trailer, everyone goes to great pains to not tell you what's going on, and we're going to respect that because it really is part of the joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you give this film out of 10?
I'm giving it a 7.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's well executed, but I don't think it hits the heights of greatness. But I think it's a really enjoyable movie to watch. You can watch it with repeat views.
I endorse that.
And I know I will. I was watching it going, no, this is really good. I'll watch this again. I think a 7 is as high as I thought I'd give it.
Well, I'm giving it an 8. I think it's a perfect little gem of a film. I have a few quibbles about the story, but I think this is a film that really knows what it wants to do, and it just goes and does it. It makes you think. You reflect on your own marriage or relationship, about who you are in that relationship and how you behave. And I found that more this second time around because I knew the story pretty much. And so I was just, in particular, focused on the husband and how he behaved and thinking, oh, am I like that? And in that respect, I find this film a little bit uncomfortable to view, even though I enjoy it. Because I'm just thinking, also, what does that mean about me? And I think that's a really good thing. And the fact that it's, largely improvised, and I didn't realise that, I think it's just a really great ensemble piece. And I also love its playfulness. So I've mentioned the fact that there's a little clue in the film poster, if you, probably easy to spot when you've actually seen the film, but it's there. And also I hadn't realised, but all the clocks at the start in the therapist's office are showing different times.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which is, I had to be told,
Yeah,
and then I could see it.
Yes. But
it really is, again, it's a sense of playfulness all through the film, and I just love that about a film. So, yeah, for me, it's an 8.
Look, I'm a bit disappointed that they allowed the budget to get out marketing-wise as a $100,000 movie. It no way reflects the quality of the film. If you don't know the budget of the film, you just think it was a really good film, and its production values are fantastic. So don't think, oh, it's a $100,000 movie, it's a cheap looking film or anything. It looks amazing. It looks like any other film you'd watch.
And it's funny. Fantastic. We haven't said that yet. It's
funny.
And
it is funny. And it is a funny film as well. And the performances are great. I really love them, both.
I want to ask you one thing that just occurred to me as I was watching it this time around. So I'm trying to pay more attention to the start and end shots of films. And the start of this film is the two of them reminiscing to the therapist about, when they first fell in love. And they stole into someone's backyard, got in the pool and swam, and the owner came out and yelled at them, and they were swimming and they fell in love, and they go and try and do it again, and the owner's away, and they both feel flat about it.
And they look really bad about it, yeah.
So, do you think I know it's Ted Danson and Mary Steenburgen's house, but do you think it was meant to be important that between these two worlds, between these two houses, there's a swimming pool?
Possibly.
But it was a great start to the film too.
Yeah. Well, it was well directed. Charlie McDowell did a good job in directing. I thought it was very well done.
And it was his debut film too.
Yeah. Kudos.
So, next up, I know this is the film that Ricardo really wants to discuss because we're not sure that we're going to agree on this one. But in our usual fashion, Ricardo, why don't you start by telling us about Natural Born Killers?
Directed by Oliver Stone, this controversial 1994 film has a pretty simple storyline. Lovers Mickey and Mallory Knox, Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis, roam the American countryside killing people. The media laps it up and they become famous. Then they are caught by Jack Scagnetti, Tom Sizemore, and go to prison. Then enter TV shock jock entertainer Wayne Gale, Robert Downey Jr., who pretty much portrays the media, who decides to interview them in prison, creating a massive riot which changes the fortunes of these two killers. Now, this seems like the plot of a road movie, and it is essentially, but it's in the telling that the film is very surreal. Natural Born Killers is filmed and edited in such a frenzied and psychedelic style which consists of a wide range of camera angles, filters, every film stock is used, lenses, special effects, black and white, animation, and other unusual colour schemes like green, which was used to portray Mickey's sickness. Rear projection, footage shot and edited prior to principal photography, projected onto a stage behind the live actors. The story is also told via parodies of television shows, including one scene, I Love Mallory, which is presented in the style of a comedy sitcom, complete with canned laughter, which tells the story of Mallory's dysfunctional family and how Mickey and Mallory met. And it's also intercut with intermittent appearances of commercials of the day. All of this creates such a madness, but not without purpose, however, as it is a controversial look at the way media portrays criminals in society and how it markets violence and suffering for the good of ratings. Oliver Stone apparently described it as watching 2 weeks of TV in 2 hours, and I completely agree. But all assembled together, this is a masterclass in film editing. Kudos has to be given to editors Brian Burden and Hank Corwin. The film took only 56 days to shoot, but the editing process went on for 11 months, with the final film containing almost 3,000 cuts. Now, putting that into perspective, most films typically have 600 to 700 cuts. Robert Richardson's outstanding cinematography is also worthy of mention. The film looks so beautiful amongst all the bloodshed. Now, the screenplay was originally written by Quentin Tarantino, who only received a story by credit after David Velo's associate producer Richard Rutowski and director Oliver Stone heavily revised it. They did, however, keep much of the dialogue, which does have a Tarantino feel. Now, I can see what Oliver Stone was trying to say here about the media. However, I feel he didn't quite get the balance right. I think he glorifies its protagonists a little too much. There were copycat killings after this film was released, much like when another controversial film, A Clockwork Orange, was released. Now, I'm not one to think that films themselves have the power to push someone that far to do unspeakable acts. However, this sort of film, coupled with someone suffering some form of mental health issues, I'm not so sure. Love it or hate it, it's definitely a film to see. You will never ever see a film like this one. It really is one of a kind. So, Greg, what did you think?
I think my best response to this film is by quoting some of Mallory's dialogue halfway through the film. Bad, 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 bad. Yeah, I really liked it. Look, true confessions, I did not expect to like this film.
Yeah.
I did not expect to like it because I thought it was a violent film. And I don't like violence in films. And that violence is certainly there. But a lot of that is cartoonish kind of stuff and over the top. Even down at one point to, the bloodied head of someone being chucked around amongst prisoners that looked like something out of a high school Shakespearean play or something. No, it was the film's telling style itself I really didn't like. At times, I felt like I was watching a student film, and I did a lot of watching and reading around this film because I just liked it so much and thinking, what am I missing here?
Some people don't like the style of it, and the style is...
Two of the producers talked about it as being part of the critique is it's the most expensive student film ever.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt to me. And at times it felt like a bit of an 80s, 90s music video. The scene where they marry each other on top of a bridge, and in the wedding veil, this long, winding piece of white material floats down from this high bridge over landscape. Felt like something straight out of Billy Idol or something. For those who were around in the 80s.
I quite love that scene, actually. I quite like that scene.
Look, I didn't like the title sequence. I didn't like the jumping around between the different styles of film. I have a personal dislike of, the thing that was very vogue about 5 years ago, where you see an interview of someone and they have two cameras at different angles, one colour, one black and white, and jump between it. When I watch those things, I think, well, why? You're trying to make this visually exciting. And I felt the same way about this. I had heard before I saw it that the black and white footage was meant to show the true interior viewpoint of characters.
It is.
And when I watched it with that intent, and I don't think that was true. I know there was a lot of editing that followed. I think this film is actually has a history of chaos before, during, and after its release. So, as you say, it was a story by Quentin Tarantino, who seems to be variously okay and very unhappy about what they did to his film. Part of that seems centred around his ability to have the right to do a novelisation of it afterwards, so it's a bit of a messy thing. But they took his film, and initially they were going to make an action film.
Yes.
To quote Oliver Stone,
that's right.
A film that Schwarzenegger would be proud of. Then Stone and one of his main producers, did a road trip, and they actually lived some of the experiences that are shown in the film. They were on the road in the car eating magic mushrooms with a police car following. It seems like a lot of the experiences came into this film and changed it quite dramatically. Then there were all these different sorts of film styles that used, and I understand that there's a director's commentary where he explains what he did when, but frankly, I don't care. It just felt so chaotic.
Well, it is. It's meant to be.
Yeah,
it is meant to be. I mean, it is. That's
and you get the impression of channel surfing.
Yeah.
But I could not wait for it to be over. And it's a 2-hour film. We seem to be doing long films lately. It's a 2-hour film, pretty much half and half, 2 stories a year apart in the main characters' lives. The marks I'm going to give it, that push it beyond 0, will be for the performances of Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
They're really good.
Yeah, they are.
I thought Robert Downey was okay. He's doing his version of an Australian accent because he's...
It sounds a bit Australian, a bit New Zealand, but that's okay.
Well, he's basically... He went and did his prior... his prep work with an Australian journalist who was really a shock jock in America in the late 80s, early 90s called Steve Dunleavy.
Yeah, that's right.
He's doing Steve Dunleavy. I think he did the same accent in Tropic Thunder, which I haven't actually seen.
Yeah.
I've seen clips of.
Yeah.
And it's all right, but his character is really over the top, whereas I find the central lovers are believable.
Yeah, but that character itself is portraying media.
Okay, and Tommy Lee Jones, I think, is doing Two-Face out of the Batman film.
Yeah,
I didn't think he was that great. Tom Sizemore as the policeman, though he was fine in the part, but the character was so, again, unbelievable. He kills a prostitute in his hotel room all the time saying, "I'm kidding, I'm just kidding." Yeah, he's a psychopath, and it's like, oh, really?
That scene there, look, it's quite an interesting scene because you're going, hang on, he's a cop, and what's he doing here? But he's got an infatuation with Mickey and Mallory just as much as anybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so what he's doing is trying to get into the minds of them and kill somebody to see what it feels like. I think that's what that scene is about. Absolutely. Yeah. I think around the time as well, I think the 90s itself were very fixated on serial killers. We had a lot of serial killer movies around that time. You had, Silence of the Lambs, you have Seven, Copycat, to name a few. There's a real fascination with them, and even the media with John Wayne Gacy and. But
Seven's a much more intelligent, well-constructed film.
It is. It's different, but I'm saying media had a lot of infatuation with serial killers at that time. You had Ted Bundy in the late 80s. You had John Wayne Gacy. They were all very heavily publicised cases and put.
Although the film does go to pains to say these are not serial killers because serial killers have no sense of moral, compunction. They say that they're. What do they call them? Not mass murder or something. They call them something else because they do have that sense of morality. They just don't care.
Yes.
So it does go to pains to say these are not serial killers in that kind of sense. Look, I take what you say. I actually haven't seen that many Oliver Stone films. I saw JFK and enjoyed that when it came out. And I've seen...
This is a very different Oliver Stone film. Like you can't look at Oliver Stone. I've seen every one of his films. I am a fan of Oliver Stone's work from Salvador onwards. I think I really like him. As a filmmaker, and what I like about him is he does push boundaries. He does do things cinematically which are different. Like I said in my beginning opening, you love it or hate it, and I know people who really loathe it, and I know people who think the same as me. Yeah, that's right. But it is a film which you will never see anything like this again. You will never see a thing like this again. And that's the beauty of it.
I think we have different definitions of beauty. It's interesting what you said in your opening synopsis of this film about the moral impact of this film, and I'm with you. I honestly don't know what to make of arguments around do violent games and video games and movies, do they have any kind of effect in the real world? John Grisham, the novelist, was one of the people who tried to sue the makers of this film because it was claimed that it initiated or influenced the behaviour of someone who shot some people, I think, in some kind of shop.
Right.
And one of the clerks, I hope I got this right, who was permanently disabled by being shot, was a friend of John Grisham. So they tried to take them on. They got a little way in the courts and it basically got dismissed. But this has been a controversial film on those grounds. And I think you're probably right. I don't know what would trigger someone to adopt those kind of behaviours. I don't think it would create that in someone, but I suspect it would probably encourage. And again, that's why I have problems with this film from that perspective. It treats human suffering, murder, rape, callous murder, as entertainment. So it makes sense in the context of the film. And the most interesting part of the film actually was the sitcom history of Mallory's home life. Yeah. With Rodney Dangerfield in a very
gross role. He's gross in it. He's gross.
Well, Stone said later he didn't think that Dangerfield really understood what they were doing there, but he was so good in the part. And he wrote his own dialogue apparently as well.
Wow, yeah.
But which is quite disturbing dialogue. I think that part works. The other part that worked for me is when they finally get arrested halfway through the film, and there's a Japanese film crew, filming it all, not really understanding English at all. That was funny.
Yeah, that
but
was.
Few and far between.
Oh, I didn't mind the Indian sequence where they were.
No, see, I often found the film heavy-handed and obvious. There's always the stuff going around them, seen through windows, scenes from films and TV and whatever. And I thought, so halfway through the film, we're going to find out what's really wrong with them by having, this wise, Navajo man just intuit what was wrong with them, and we'd know what was wrong with them because they put words in light across the characters. You're like, too much TV.
That's right. Exactly,
and that's what's wrong with them. And I just thought, I used to think I liked Oliver Stone, and I'm going to have to think about this again another time. But I found the film often very heavy-handed and obvious. I found the collage of different shots less like art and more like finger painting, just sort of throw things up on the canvas and see what kind of happens.
I think a lot more thought went into that.
And he was at a very bad time in his life. He just ended his second marriage.
I know, yeah.
He was very angry and upset about what had happened. And I think a lot of that came out into the film.
Yeah.
And even the parts that I read about and so on about the actual shooting on set, particularly in the prison scenes, it reminded me a bit about what you hear about the film set for Apocalypse Now, that there was almost a kind of a madness reigning on the set.
Because the prisoners were prisoners.
Yes.
They weren't extras in this. They were actually shooting in a real prison.
Which is pretty dangerous.
Which is very dangerous, and it's quite a high security prison. So
and in between takes, Stone was playing this very original kind of rhythmic thumping African music
to
keep the beat alive.
Yeah.
With people who are actually potentially quite dangerous.
That's right.
And I think I just don't think I'd ever want to be in a room with him. I really like JFK. I like the fact there's someone who's picking up things in American social and political life and looking at them and challenging them. I think it's great.
Yes.
But this film, I think, both in terms of its content, but also the way in which it chooses to tell that content, I loathe. And as I say, it wasn't. I thought it was the violence that would put me off this film. I was okay with that, relatively speaking. It was just the film itself.
I still think we've come a long way from 1994 in the way the media handles these sorts of cases now, or serial killers. You don't, due to terrorism now, they don't glorify who the Boston bomber is or whatnot. You sort of, it comes out of the media, it just goes. They don't sort of glorify these people anymore. What we do though is sort of like, I remember when like Underbelly and the gangsters and the underworld, they really glorify that.
Underbelly being an Australian TV show about the Australian gangster world. Yeah,
that's right. You had the radio, some radio commentators take one of the wives on a tour through the streets of Melbourne, showing where the killings were and whatnot. That's really glorifying the violence and glorifying these people, which I don't think is right. But still, I still think this is an interesting film to watch. See it. Have an opinion. Like with any controversial film, I always go to the controversial movies because I want to have an opinion of that controversial movie. So, I don't want to just hear it from a source to say, oh, that's bad or that's good. I'll always go and see that.
And spend 2 hours of your life to develop that opinion?
Absolutely.
No, I think it's worth it, frankly.
No, I'll always do that.
The other shortfall in the film from a story perspective is that we see, in that sort of, flashback sitcom style, the story of how Mickey and Mallory meet and the story of how they have their first kills, which are her parents. And the next thing we know, if you just take the film and put it in its chronology rather than its narrative chronology, the next thing we know, they're on the road and they're killing people.
Yeah.
But what I don't think we saw was who they killed next after the parents. Because the parents were very much in reaction to her horrible home situation and freeing her from that.
Yeah.
And then they're on the road and they're killing people when they feel like it.
Yeah.
I think the interesting part of the story would have been who did they kill next, in what context, what set that off? Because that's when they go from a personal kind of revenge, get me out of here kind of crime to anyone is fodder for our killing. Yeah. I thought that was a missing part of the story.
Okay, I can see what you mean by that. I think it's pretty clear that after they do those killings, that they probably, the media caught hold of them. They're these lovers on the run. That the fame of that and the stories about them got them killing further. and then they sort of become a taste for it. Like they had that whole, they always leave one clerk alive to tell the tale of Mickey and Mallory.
One perspective, because that bites a few people later on.
Yeah.
Because they think that's what they'll be saved because they're the last person there.
That's right. Yeah.
What did you think of the endings of the film?
Yeah, I know there are two endings. I know they did film two endings. I sort of forget what the non-theatrical version ending was.
Well, in one ending they get away, and the other they don't.
Right.
The two main characters.
Yeah, sure.
And the one which they don't, I won't say which is which, but the one where they don't get away, they, the character who helps them get out of prison, Owen?
Yes.
You don't find out in one ending what happened to him. But in the other ending, they escape with him, but then they're saying, well, no, you don't come with us. You get out now. And he's saying, but I want to be with you guys. So he ends up killing them both. And what I hadn't realised is he's in the very opening scene of the film as well. He's in the diner in one of those black and white scenes where he's there and then he vanishes as you watch. Mm-hmm. Why?
Well, it's sort of showing what their future is going to be as well. It's sort of a projection of somebody there that's going to be in their lives.
He's not that memorable a face, though.
No, he's not.
He's almost an everyman.
He is, that's right. And I didn't get that. I've seen this quite a few times. I'll tell you the first time I saw this film. I saw it in 1994. I saw it at the cinema.
This is just after you've been on the road killing people?
I was not 18, but
yep.
I snuck into the...
you were under 18?
Yeah, I was under 18. Yeah, I was 17, but I got in because it was a 4-movie marathon at the Village Cinemas in Knox, which is in Melbourne. And it was the last film. And
what were the other 3?
I forget.
Okay.
Because this one made quite an impact. But the front 2 rows were like right up to the screen. Now, I was able to get a seat in the second row. Now, when you watch Natural Born Killers and you're sitting so close to a massive screen looking up, it really made me feel sick by the end of it. I remember the sound of gunshots at the end of this movie making me physically feel sick, and it's the first time a movie had ever done that. And this is somebody who, at that time, loved anything form of violence. I used to look at the ratings on there and say, if it said high-level violence and high-level coarse language, I was there, and it did have an impact on me. But
so what will you give it, Ricardo?
I'm giving it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah?
Yeah.
For those reasons?
Yeah, for those reasons. I think I've been through them.
Well, given what you just said about, how you first saw this film and your response to it, before I give my score, could you just put that gun down? This film reminded me a lot of Chopper, which came out after this film. Chopper we reviewed last season, an Australian film about a true life story of someone not entirely dissimilar to these characters, but similar storytelling methods. This film made me feel like I'd been harsh to Chopper, made me feel like I'd been harsh to Cabaret, and even tempted me to feel like I might have been harsh to Showgirls, but I think that would be nigh on impossible. But I just did not like it. As I say, I thought the 2 leads were very, very good in their parts, Juliette Lewis and Woody Harrelson. Interestingly, this is the second film tonight we're reviewing with actors from Cheers in it as well. We keep finding this kind of commonalities between films that we didn't actually quite intend. But look, I'm giving it a 2. There was so much I disliked in this film. I will never, ever watch it again.
Did you understand the media premise with this or not? Did you understand what he was trying to say?
Do you think that he was so light-handed that you could miss that?
Yeah, no.
No. And
you still,
my problem is not the violence. I have moral questions over this film. I don't know what to make of them. That's not particularly influencing my score. It really is about the way the story was told. I just think it was heavy-handed, obvious, scattergun. Did not like it.
Okay, well, again, like I said...
Can't wait for the remake.
Hang on, like I said in my earlier...
You will love it or you'll hate it.
You will love it or hate it, but I think it's worth seeing. Okay, definitely make up your own mind. So the third film we're going to discuss tonight is 2004's film Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. You've probably noticed, Greg, that all of our films have the number 4 in them at the moment.
I know, they're all 10 years apart.
They're all 10 years apart, so...
And that means something.
It's surreal. Okay, so take it away, Greg.
It's a surreal thing.
Yeah.
Boy meets girl. Boy and girl fall in love and live together. Girl leaves boy and then erases him and their relationship from her memories. Boy finds out and decides to have the same treatment. Then Joel, Jim Carrey, discovers that he doesn't actually want to erase his memories of Clementine, Kate Winslet. Problem is, Joel discovers this mid-treatment when he's unconscious. We spend the film moving between Joel's interior consciousness and what's happening around him in his apartment, taken over by the medical team, played by Tom Wilkinson, Kirsten Dunst, Mark Ruffalo and Elijah Wood. I use the word medical very loosely here. Although the film goes to great pains to make the procedure believable, the Lacuna team's equipment is frighteningly low-tech, and their ethics and care leave a lot to be desired. This 2004 film is a delight of visual whimsy, as Joel tries to keep Memory Clementine safe from the procedure, while his memories literally dissolve around him, and people and landscapes vanish or deconstruct. Its co-writers include its director, Michel Gondry, and it very much displays his surreal visual sensibilities, also seen later in his 2013 French film, Mood Indigo, which Ricardo and I saw together. And Charlie Kaufman, who is the writer and co-director of Anomalisa, which we reviewed in our last season, and the writer of 1999's Being John Malkovich, a film which has much in common with this one. I loved this film when it first came out, and I'm staggered that it's taken me 14 years to watch it again. It certainly stands up well to a second viewing. Now, Ricardo, I know that you've seen this film before too. What did you think?
This is a beautiful film. I love Charlie Kaufman. I think he's a great writer, and there's no other writer like him. He has his own style, and it works. He's brilliant. I loved adaptation. Loved Being John Malkovich.
I didn't love adaptation.
So I loved adaptation. Yeah. I loved Being John Malkovich when I saw it. That was my first
absolutely.
Charlie Kaufman
I think
experience.
Me too, yeah.
And I loved that as well.
You liked Anomalisa more than I did, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. He does have that sort of surrealness to his work, which it works.
It works for him,
It really does. But I just love the premise here. I think, and it really shows that even though breakups are freaking tough, we need to process what happened so we can learn from them, then move on. You know, those little imperfections, miscommunications, and somewhat imbalance between the two are the things that ultimately break these characters, which are brilliantly played by Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet.
Yes. And you know, different kinds of characters for them by and large. Like, Jim Carrey is someone I can really take or leave. When he's in his kind of very histrionic kind of mode, that can be entertaining, but I can get very tired quickly. But in this film, and also the Truman Show, which has some kind of similarities, I think, he's very, very good.
He is. Yeah, but what's lovely here, right, is that in the Charlie Kaufman universe, is that they find all of these little foibles out in their relationship. They find all about that and get another shot.
Yes.
And that's really lovely. But it doesn't necessarily have to be sort of a breakup either, okay? It could also say that, you know, once you accept these sort of negative flaws in somebody and just focus on letting, you know, the beautiful qualities shine through, that's strong love.
And you know, they're at the same point as the couple in The One I Love that we talked about just before. That they're couples who know each other backwards pretty much. They, as you say, they know each other's foibles. They know their buttons. They know the things that annoy them about the other person.
That's right.
In this case, they go down a different path.
But one thing I love about... I talked about the subtlety and the simplicity in the way The One I Love was told. See, Michel Gondry, I really love and hate, you know, in terms of his directorial style. Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind is his perfect work.
Yes.
It's a perfect balance between the story and the fantastical, whereas something like Mood Indigo goes over the top.
I, from memory, we both really liked that in the first half, and then it got a bit tiring because the story wasn't there to support it. And this film is the opposite.
It's the opposite. The story is very much there to support its fantastical elements. But even in, I didn't like Be Kind Rewind either. That was another one.
Well, I was going to say, I didn't like. I expected to, and I didn't.
Yeah, so
I was bored by The Green Hornet.
Yeah, I never saw that one.
I was really bored, and I haven't yet seen The Science of Sleep.
So, no, I haven't seen that either. But apparently that is very good. But this is his perfect work for me.
And, you know, one of its delights, I mean, if you say that The One I Love is a very simple and simply told story, this story is a complex story. You don't start at the start point. You start almost at the end of the actual real story.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's giving away too much, hopefully. But and then you kind of jump around the chronology, and then you're inside his memories and jumping around his life. So it's a complex narrative structure.
It is.
And it would have been made for a lot more than 100,000 because of all the visual effects. A house dissolving on the beachfront as you watch. You've got a bookshop where the titles just start fading, all the colour and words.
Right.
Which is very
You've
subtle.
Got cars dropping out of the sky.
But that bookshop seems one I remembered for all those years. It was just how beautifully done that was. Or they walk out of the bookshop in his memory into what I think is his sister's house by going through a doorway. That's so it's one elaborate set. This is not a cheap, simple film.
It's not.
Couldn't be more poles apart.
But one thing I love, that did use digital effects, obviously, in this, in terms of the car and the house falling down and all the rest of it, all digital effects. But in saying that, they did so much of this, tried to do it so much in camera, which was lovely to see because it makes it so real in his world and in his mind. When he's small and he's
I've forgotten his childhood scenes, but they're lovely. And they mix between a child actor in his pajamas under the kitchen table, and Jim Carrey in the role with obviously oversized fridges and tables.
That's right.
And camera work to where Kate Winslet is the normal.
He's the large size and he's the small. So that's all in camera, and them in the sink.
The big sink having a bath together,
is a set. So
it serves the story.
It does. It's so real to him. Everything that's happening to him is so real to him. So that it makes sense. It's very good. There
are scenes a couple of times in this where he's going back into, I think, more recent memories in both cases, where it's dark rooms and there's like a spotlight shining the characters, which is obviously like his attention to what was happening in that scene, because all the background details just faded. Just lots of different ways this story finds.
Or when he goes through and there's faceless character, the faceless...
Or the Elijah Wood character with the upside-down eyes, which is quite creepy.
Yeah, that's creepy, yes.
Because it's so quick as well.
Yeah.
But again, it serves the story. It's not a story that says, oh, let's do a whole lot of CGI special effects stuff and make a great story with that. This is, what do we need to tell that story with that sense of whimsy? And it just works.
Again, it comes from an amazing base, and that's the screenplay, which is Kaufman's work. It really does. I mean, it's like, I think films are like any building. You have to have a strong base, and the screenplay is your first point of call. If that's great, then it's the director to stuff it up, and the post-production to stuff it up.
I think this is not a critique, but you do need to have a bit of patience with the story as you kind of work out in the first part what's going on, and then with the fact that this is not a typical linear narrative. And despite all the criticism I just made of Natural Born Killers and the way it tells its story, my impatience there is not with the fact that it's not a linear story. It's the manner of the storytelling. This, you have to kind of like that kind of story where you're happy to go with the flow a bit while you work out what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. But that's all with his work.
But it pays off.
If you're a Kaufman fan, you're gonna love it. So when I first saw it, I didn't know much about it, but I'd heard that it gets a bit fantastical and there's a few elements to it like that. It's such a lovely, well-rounded work from start to finish. And I think Jim Carrey, like I said before, their performances, and Kate Winslet, I don't think I've seen them better. Just like it's Michel Gondry's perfect work, I think this is Winslet and Carey's perfect work. And they're so good together. Yes. And they work so well together. And I think they did rehearse quite a lot before shooting.
And it's got a great cast all round. This
it does.
This is the first film I saw Mark Ruffalo in.
Right.
I knew all the other faces, one way or another.
No, the first time I saw Mark Ruffalo was in The Cut, which is the James Campbell
which I haven't
film.
seen.
Yeah.
But he and the others all play their parts really well. They all look very young. But they all play their parts really well.
They do.
There's a bit of bravery, I think, of some characters dancing around in their underwear, jumping on a bed.
Yeah.
I thought, good on you.
Yeah.
But, of the three films that we're talking about in this episode, I actually think on reflection that this is the only one of the three that I would really call surreal. Because surrealism to me is, thinking about surrealist art of maybe the 1920s and Magritte and Co.
Sure.
It's about taking unexpected elements and putting them into a story that moves it beyond the real, sometimes just for its own pleasure, sometimes because it's communicating something. I think this film does that. The other films have strange elements to them.
Yes.
And I think that Natural Born Killers does things that are not real, like having all these back projections in different scenes.
Yeah.
And that's why we chose those three films.
That's
but
right.
having watched them, I don't think those other two really are surreal as such. But this really is. And no surprise that there's a very French sensibility around it as well, because it's where a lot of the big surrealist art came from, at least that I'm aware of, was people like Magritte.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's lovely moments in there as well. I mean, it takes a long time for the first credit sequence. I think it's 20 minutes for the opening credit sequence to come through.
That's right.
This. So
and you're watching a little story and not quite sure what's going on.
That's right.
At parts of it.
Well, you're seeing them meet each other, and then
Elijah Wood suddenly pops up.
Elijah Wood suddenly pops up, and then suddenly they're sort of together, and then suddenly he's crying in the car over the. And
you think
sequence.
you skipped some years, and without quite saying what's going on, that's not what's happened. And the film lets you to believe that for quite a while.
Yeah,
but then it brings it back, and you know what that first bit was about without being too heavy-handed. I think this is again a gem of a film.
every time I turn on this film, and I've seen it a few times now, just from the opening frame of Jim Carrey opening his eyes, I cannot stop watching it.
I think this film has beauty, it has whimsy, it's intelligent, it has bittersweet sadness in it.
It does.
I love the line when he first goes to the agency, lacuna. Oh, do you know what lacuna means?
What does
I had to look it up. It means a gap in the skull.
Oh, wow.
So
I
it's
didn't
perfect,
know. Oh, wow, that's perfect.
they're taking
I
out
didn't know that.
taking out parts of these memories.
I had no idea.
From the brain map, if you like.
Yeah.
I love the bit where he turns up the first time and Kirsten Dunst, who's kind of the receptionist.
Yes.
Well, he's the receptionist. She says to somebody else, I told him pre-Valentine is our busiest time.
Yeah.
All these people who are so distraught at not having the great love of their life, including in one case it was a pet, a dog,
Yeah,
quite
the
obviously,
dog, that's
because
right,
it was the bowl
exactly.
and the chewable bone.
Yeah.
That was the time when people really felt the need to get rid of these memories. And you have to go with the story. I mean, if this treatment really existed, a lot of other people would be probably doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
And it also relies on the goodness of other people, because when someone has their memories wiped of person X, all the people in their lives get a card saying, person Y has decided to erase their memories of their relationship with person X. Please never mention it again.
Yeah.
That's a big ask.
That is a big ask. But one thing I love about it is through the film, when the memory is being erased and he's not wanting to forget these memories, there is goodness in relationship. Even when a breakup happens, there is great things which you want to keep. So I love that aspect of it.
And I love too the way that he talked to his memory of Clementine. And I had to keep reminding myself, this is not meant to be the real Clementine. This is his memory of her. But she's talking as quite an independent character, but also with love and affection for him. And you can see what he treasured about the memory that he couldn't see at the end of the relationship. There's just so much love about this film.
There is.
And your score for it?
I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. I think it's perfect. It's very well structured, beautifully directed, beautifully written, beautiful performances. What's the fault? So I can't take a score off that.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
For me, it's like It's a Wonderful Life, which, is my benchmark. And like that film, this film has a really solid humanity to it. The depiction of the relationship between Joel and Clementine, I think, is rock solid and really works in the context of the story. And then you've got all that other stuff going on around it. And like It's a Wonderful Life, the whimsy element too, but never loses sight of the humanity. So in our next episode, which we're calling Year 12 Homework, this is particularly for all the students here in our hometown of Melbourne or home state of Victoria who are doing their Year 12 studies and either doing a film as a text or perhaps a text which has been filmed. So we've gone to 3 people that we know who are currently doing Year 12, including my older son, and we're doing a text for each of those 3 students, kind of like a book club.
Yeah.
Now, we don't want them to rely on what we say to get them through the exams, but maybe it might help.
Well, it might help some Year 12 students, absolutely. So, the first film we're going to be talking about, this is Teo's film.
Yes, my son's film.
Okay, is the 2009 film, Clint Eastwood film, Invictus.
Which I haven't seen of you.
I haven't seen it.
Okay. And then secondly, for our very good friend and neighbour, Gemma.
Yeah.
They're studying Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire.
Yeah.
So we're doing
Elia Kazan.
So we're doing Elia Kazan's 1951 film of that, of course, with Marlon Brando and Vivian Leigh.
Yep, that's right. And for Ellen,
my niece.
That's right, we are doing the Hitchcock classic Rear Window, which was in 1954.
Now, we've done a bit of Hitchcock before, a couple of years ago now.
Yep.
So maybe it's time to come full circle again. But, and of course, we'll be spruiking the fact that you can go back to season 1 and listen to us on Hitchcock as well.
Absolutely. So, see you next time.
No, I should be saying that this time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, see you next time.